Hello everyone, this is a video about the difference between reading for pleasure, reading for information, and reading to deeply understand literature. Let's jump in. Now, when we're reading for information, and I've noticed this a lot with my students reading for various school assignments, is we'll skim through the lines and just briefly glance across the information, specifically looking for an answer. This is very different from what we do when we are looking to read to understand literature at a deep level. We'll often go back through what we've read once before and look for little details that stick out to us, and we do a lot of contemplation. So that could be thinking on paper in the margins, that could be doodling, that could be taking notes as we go, a variety of things. But when we're reading for information, we're looking for a specific answer. When we're reading to understand literature deeply, we're thinking about the different details and the impact that they have on the work as a whole. Both of these two options are very different from reading for enjoyment. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, because I know that most of my students have some level of proficiency with reading for information, and many have a high level of proficiency with reading to understand literature deeply. I'm not talking about those. Today I'm talking about immersing yourself in a story. At the most basic level, what I would say is just to treat a story like it's a movie. Just have fun, sit back. When you watch a movie, you don't take notes. You're not skimming through the movie for information. And you're not trying to overanalyze it as you go, usually. If thoughts spontaneously generate about the things that you're reading, that's one thing, but intentionally trying to overanalyze as you go, that's not what I'm talking about. Don't do that. Just treat it like a movie. Picture the scenes and the characters in your head. Let the experience unfold. Just have fun. That's the most basic essence of it. One way you can do this is by reading in a way that works for you. That's like your encoding strategies. Method 1, things like laying down, being in relative isolation, low light, being cozy, having snacks, a drink, you got your book with you, reading all to yourself in your head. That's method 1. Method 2 is a slight variation on that. You can add in some slight background noise and read aloud the characters' voices to yourself. That's one way that I like to really connect with how the characters are feeling. It lets me kind of be an actor as I go through the story, so it lets me connect more emotionally with what's happening and understand details I might not have caught otherwise. That's one way that I like to make it a movie, just for myself. All right. Also, I recommend that you trace the words with your finger as you go. That can help you to pay attention and not lose track. You know, when our minds sometimes like wander off. Finger tracking, it helps. All right, method 3, audiobook and something simple to do with your hands. So doodling, knitting, playing with Play-Doh, fidgets, Legos, etc., just something simple. Method 4, audiobook and going for a walk. Treadmill, outside in a safe area. Method number 5, reading aloud with friends. Now, remember, with any of these strategies, the goal is to pick a strategy that lets you achieve that super fun movie in your head type of feeling. So whichever method you go with, pick a strategy that lets you obtain that. Did you know that your imagination is something you can grow? You can work towards creating a better, more vivid movie experience for yourself over time with a bit of training, some practice. Practice makes perfect, just like with everything else. Reading is no different. So what's the difference between a movie filmed and produced in low resolution versus high resolution? Standard definition versus high definition, right? It's the amount of detail in the picture. So same thing with your imagination. It's time to add in some details to your imagination. Talented authors will typically give you most of the clues that you need to get the essential idea out of any scene or interaction in a book. But talented authors will also leave enough room for ambiguity so that each individual reader will have the mental movie experience of co-creating the story with the author. For example, here are some of the opening paragraphs of the book Treasure Island. take a look at these and see if you can fill in some of the details with your imagination. See if you can create that mental movie. I'll read it aloud to you. I remember him as if it were yesterday, as he came plodding to the inn door, his sea chest following behind him in a hand barrow. A tall, strong, heavy, nut-brown man, his terry pigtail falling over his shoulders of his soiled blue coat, his hands ragged and scarred with black broken nails and the saber cut across one cheek, a dirty, livid white. I remember him looking round the cove and whistling to himself as he did so, then breaking out in that old sea song that he sang so often afterwards. 15 men on the dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum. In the high, old tottering voice that seemed to have been tuned and broken at the capstan bars. Then he rapped on the door with a bit of stick like a handspike that he carried, and when my father appeared, called roughly for a glass of rum. This, when it was brought to him, he drank slowly, like a connoisseur, lingering on the taste, and still looking about him at the cliffs and up at our signboard. So this is awesome. The author gives us lots of information about how this character looks, about how he's moving, about how he sounds, and about how some of the different sounds that he makes, like his walking stick rapping on the door. Now, I have to add in some of the information myself. Like, I have to picture this old sea dog's face. I have to imagine his voice. I am imagining the setting, too, of where he's walking in. We know it's an inn. We know he's a pirate, so you kind of fill in some of the missing images. And it'll be different from me to you and to every other individual, but we get the same general idea that the author supplies and create the rest with our own imagination in a way that makes the story really unique to us. That's what's so cool about this. You get to have a movie of your own creation that speaks to you personally and is like a play field for your imagination. It's so cool. So here are a couple of additional details that could help you to develop your standard definition imagination movie into a high definition, high quality production. Here's some questions. It's basically the different senses. So if you were standing in the exact same spot, in the exact same moment as either the main character or the narrator, what would you see? What would you smell? Sea salt in this case. What would you hear? What would you feel? What would you sense emotionally? Sometimes when you're in a situation, you kind of get that sixth sense where your muscles clench just before a moment of danger, or the hair on your arm raises when something big is about to happen, or when you can just feel yourself being watched, or when you kind of know what another character is thinking or feeling, even if they haven't directly stated or shown it in the text. Anything that you would emotionally, intuitively know. That's one of your senses as well. So sight, sound, smell. Taste doesn't really apply that often, but maybe things that you could feel and things that you would emotionally feel. High definition, mental movie. Is big brain time. Let me try this. What does this character right now in this moment feel? What's their perspective? How are they thinking? How are they reacting? It's like trying to connect to that same experience that the character is having in the story, trying to experience it with them, in their thoughts, in their feelings. Step into their shoes and look at the story from that character's unique perspective. Then, if you're really up for a challenge, try doing that for every single character in the cast, or at least every major player in the scenes. And then you'll truly feel like an author, trying to see it from everyone's perspective all at once. Oh, the scenes just evolve in such a unique way. For example, with the Treasure Island opening, the boy who's watching this old sea dog make his entrance versus the older pirate who's on his way in, their experiences and perspectives are vastly different, but if you put yourself into the perspective of both the character being watched and the character doing the watching, it really enriches the scene. There's a quote from a wonderful book called Ender's Game, where the main character essentially defeats his enemies by outthinking them. And in order to do that, he has to empathize deeply with them to see things from their perspective. Here is a quote from Ender's Game that I think helps to kind of illustrate this concept. The main character says, "In the moment when I truly understand my enemy, understand him well enough to defeat him, then in that very moment, I also love him. I think it's impossible to really understand somebody, what they want, what they believe, and not love them the way they love themselves." Basically, do that. It's an exercise in extreme empathy, trying to love the character in the sense of truly, deeply understanding their psychology, their perspective, their experience. This is different from condoning or rationalizing or justifying. It's different from that. It's just understanding how the character thinks. One of the end results of this is that you get to live 1,000 lifetimes in the space of just reading a single book. And in the process, you get to know yourself better. You get to know how other people work better, because remember, these characters were created by a person, creating their thoughts and embodying experiences, distilling down real-world experiences into a compact package for you to contemplate. This is a very high-level academic exercise to do this. Characters are either human or they were written by humans. That's all I'm saying. Gain wisdom. If you read long enough, you see the same eyes in different people. All right, so that's reading for enjoyment. At the most basic level, just enjoy the experience, make it a movie in your mind. At the next highest level, pick a strategy that helps you to effectively accomplish that. Everyone kind of jumps into this experience differently. Pick strategies that will help you to effectively jump into this mental movie experience. Once you've gotten those two things down, remember that you can grow your imagination, start adding in some more of the senses, really picture the different information that you would be experiencing if you were standing in the same place as the character or the narrator in any given scene. And big brain mode, you can kind of step into the very perspective of each character. And if you're really feeling it, into all the different characters, a bit at a time. Sometimes that takes more than one rereading. Congratulations, now you know how to read.